everyone! So today I'm going to be working on a new history-bounding dress inspired by Polonaise styles from the 18th century. I'm gonna keep the ties that gather up the skirt, the general silhouette, but I'm not hand sewing the whole thing. It's not gonna be original practice or anything like that. In fact, I'm making it out of a fabric that's covered in cats, so not quite historically accurate, I'd say. Now, this dress was actually intended as part of the project that I had planned for last month for Halloween. I did a project announcement video about it, and obviously that did not happen because it is not October anymore, but I decided to still go ahead with everything because, like I mentioned in the original video, I was planning on wearing these pieces just as part of my normal wardrobe, despite the fact that the colour scheme of this fabric is maybe quite Halloween-esque. I figured it's fine, so, you know, we're going ahead anyway. So there were a couple of key points that I kept in mind as I was figuring out how I wanted this dress to go together. The first is that I want it to be convertible. So in short, I want to be able to gather up the back to create that Polonaise look, but I also want to be able to wear it as a normal dress closed down the front. So basically what I'm doing to make that happen is extending the skirt to the center front so that I can close it there. That's a little bit different from the historical styles, but from a functionality standpoint, I think I'm going to get a lot more wear out of a dress that I can just wear on its own as well, that I don't need to layer on another skirt or have look quite so dramatic. The second is I need the bodice to be under a bit of tension. So I'm using a pattern that I did a video on already. For the base of the bodice, obviously I'm adding sleeves and a skirt. However, the original bodice that I made laced closed in the front. So that's great for a bodice that's under tension because it's very easy to put on. However, I don't want visible lacing on this dress. So I'm going to try to put hidden lacing and have the bodice close with hooks and eyes over the top of it. I don't think it'll make sense if I try and just explain it. I'll try and show it, but it might just be that it takes until I've got it partially put together until it really makes sense. But I'll try, so I'll jump to that. Okay, so this is one of my bodice pieces. Excuse all the stray marks on my lacing pattern. This is just a scrap of paper. So basically my plan is to sew the boning channels and the lacing first, and then add my top fabric on the outside. Obviously this is a different pattern piece, but that way none of the stitching will show through. So the plan with the lacing specifically is it's going to be about this size, but there's going to be 2 boning channels with eyelets down the middle, and it'll be stitched along this edge here. That means this will move independently and I'll be able to lace through here, and I can finish this edge off afterwards. And then it will be like that. Before I can start on the lacing though, I'm actually adding in my boning channels. So I put mine next to the side and back seams and along the front panel, as well as a thin cotton tape along the waist, which keeps it from stretching. These are all sewn through just the base layer of coutil. I haven't added my top fabric yet because I don't want the stitching to show on the outside. Once I've done that, I make my lacing strips out of 2 layers of coutil. I add in my boning and the eyelets and finish the edge with a zigzag stitch. Then I just line up the edge with my center front and sew it to the coutil as well. Finally, I add in my boning. I'm using synthetic whalebone, and then I can add my top fabric. Okay, so it's been a couple of days since I checked in, just because I've been working on other projects, though I did get a little bit done, and I'll show it to you in a second to catch you up. But I did want to briefly mention that I'm not going into a ton of detail about how the bodice goes together. I'll try to maybe include a little bit more when I get to the skirt, but basically it's very similar to the bodice in the video that I already did, and two, I am planning on publishing the pattern for this in the future. Not right now, sorry. It'll be a little while, but just for my sanity, I want to limit the number of times that I do a detailed explanation of how it goes together, just so I don't go insane doing the same project over and over again and including the full explanation every time. I hope that makes sense. I hope that's all right. But yes, let me show you what the bodice looks like now. So this is the first half of the bodice. The inside's nearly finished off. It does have the boning in already, and this front edge is finished off. So hopefully my explanation earlier makes a little bit more sense now as to how that's going to work. I did end up finishing the edges with zigzag stitching. I haven't done this one yet, but it'll be done the same, only I'm going to do both sides together since it's getting pressed together. Yes, and the bottom edge will be turned up the same way that linen bodice was. So will the neckline once I get to that, and the armhole will be zigzagged, and the sleeve will as well, same as this seam here. So I'm just going to do the other side, and then I can do a fitting, make sure that my sleeve pattern is all right. Yeah, and then get started putting the rest of it together. All right, another day again, obviously. I did do the sleeve fitting yesterday, and I'm more or less happy with how it turned out. I think for the final version of this pattern, I'm going to raise the armhole just a tiny bit because my range of motion, this is a bad shirt to demonstrate in because the sleeves are cut so low, but my range of motion is, I can't get my arm much higher than shoulder level, which is, it's alright. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure there are people who disagree with me and would think that is a horrible thing, but it's fine. It's fine. I'm fine with it. Anyway, yes, I'll change it in the final pattern, so it'll be better if anyone else makes this at any point. Yes, so today, I could work on the sleeves, but I think what I'm actually going to do is finish off the bodice. There's not really a reason for this, it's just what I feel like doing. Yeah, that's it basically. I think that's both the benefits and my downfall when it comes to making my own pattern for things, that there's no order that you have to go in. It's nice sometimes because it means you can just, work on whatever you want, but other times it's decision paralysis and I cannot decide. But I feel like finishing off the bodice today, so that's what I'm going to do. So there's a couple more seams that need finishing off in the inside. Sorry, I'm looking at my list. There's a couple, yes, the seams that need finishing, and the neckline and the waistline, which I'm going to finish off as well, and the hooks and eyes in the front, which will make the whole thing look slightly less odd when I try it on, because I'll actually be able to close it fully. Yes. So yeah, that's sort of it. I imagine it'll probably take some time to finish it all off because it is going to be quite a lot of hand sewing, but I guess we'll see. I'm not actually sure how much I explained my reasoning with the boning earlier on, so I just thought I'd quickly do that. Basically, the side and the back boning are next to the seams instead of on the seams. I could have put them on afterwards on top of the seams, which would have had basically the same effect. This is really more of a theatre way of doing it, I guess, though my seam allowances are pretty small. But basically the reasoning is it's easier to adjust, and also because I didn't want any of the stitching showing through to the outside, that meant stitching them just to the couture before I put the top fabric on. So the seam allowances on mine, like I just said, they are pretty small. That's just 1 centimeter. So there's not really that much I can adjust, but I could add in an extra panel, for example, very easily. Yeah, that's it basically. It would be easy to make this a lot more adjustable if you just left bigger seam allowances, particularly on the side seam. I'll zoom out a bit so you can see what you're looking at. This is the center back, side back seam, side seam. Sorry, they're still tacking on this one. This is the front. So leaving more seam allowance here would make it easier to adjust if you fluctuate in weight a lot. That would be my recommendation. Also, I realized that I'm still missing this piece of the strap, which I need to piece in, and I actually need to cut my sleeves out first because I only have one bit of fabric left that's not already designated for the skirt, and that's for the sleeves. So I need to cut the sleeves and then I can cut these pieces from the leftovers. Okay, today is sleeve day. I have a feeling that I already said on another day that it was sleeve day, and they're not done yet. But I am doing them today. That's my plan for today. I've got the rest of the afternoon for this project, so I'm just going to be sewing. So hopefully we'll get a little bit further. Just like I have been doing, I will switch the camera around in just a second and I'll show you how far I've gotten, just because this weekend just gone, today's Monday, this weekend just gone, I did not do a whole bunch of filming of what I did, but I did do a little bit of sewing. So let's jump to that. Bodice probably doesn't look a whole lot different. I can't remember, to be honest, what it looked like last time, but I did get this placket done. So that's not sewn in yet, but that's probably hopefully on the list for today as well. So I'm not gonna line this all up, but basically this is pattern matched as well. So in theory, once this is all done, that will sit on top, and in case the inside peeks through of the placket, that will also match. No hooks on this side yet. I'm going to wait until I've sewn the placket in, and I've also started sewing down this waist edge. So I've just done a spaced back stitch just to keep the edge secure, and then I'm just whip stitching this down. I'm not entirely sure that I like this, to be honest, so I might cover it with a piece of bias. Not entirely sure yet again. And I need to do the neckline still as well. That's probably not on the list today, but definitely I will be piecing this part of the strap that's still missing, because I've been waiting for the sleeves to be cut out so that I can get a big enough piece of fabric to do that. I think I mentioned that earlier. Anyway, yep, so bodice probably doesn't look a whole lot different. This is very time consuming. I did not film it because I did the exact same thing on the other bodice, so you can watch it there if you haven't yet. And yeah, so let's get going. So my plan for the sleeves is this. First, I'm going to sew the underarm seams on the cat fabric and the backing fabric separately. So I'm essentially going to have 4 sleeves at that point. Then I'm going to put right sides together, and I'm going to sew them together on the cuff edge. That should mean that I can turn them through and all my seam allowances will be on the inside, which is great because it means I don't have to finish any of them off. I haven't decided yet what I'm going to do when I sew it into the armhole. So I could either overlock or zigzag the top edge of the sleeve and just sew right sides together, standard, or I could try to do similar and sew the outer fabric first from the outside and then sew the inner fabric like covering it from the inside. I'm not sure that makes any sense, and I'm not sure I'm going to do it either, but it's a thought. But for now, I'm going to focus on getting the sleeves themselves together and then see where I go from there. The schedule did get shifted around again a bit, as anticipated, as always, because I realised that not that I needed to, I realised that I wanted to cut out the lawn, the cotton lawn, for the skirts before I cut out the sleeves, just because I knew that my fabrics were different widths and that I was going to have weird shaped pieces at the end, or weirdly sized pieces. Maybe they're all rectangles, so they're not shaped that weird. Anyway, I did that first, which means I've got something checked off my list for tomorrow already, so that's handy. But yeah, so sleeves first, then piecing the armhole strap, this piece, and then I'll see about sewing them in. So here is the sleeve after I've stitched it. All the seam allowances are facing out. I mean, I suppose this one's in the inside but you can see what I mean. And this cuff edge has been stitched and I made some cuts into it. I will be trimming this seam allowance down further, but I want to do a fitting first. So then I just turn it through and reach through the whole thing, grab the lining and pull it through. So that'll take a second to neaten all the edges up, but basically you can see that there won't be any raw edges showing. Yeah, and from the top it looks like this, and there's all our seam allowance. So I'm pretty sure my iron just died. It's not lighting up anymore. It's not heating up anymore. So that's fun. Maybe that's what I get for getting distracted again, because I moved back to working on the placket instead of the sleeves. Though actually I'm not doing either right now. I was going to add a reinforcement to the neckline, but I can't apparently, because I can't iron anything. And yes, it is plugged in and turned on. So I'm just using this orange fabric to do the hem. It's just a really simple facing. Obviously, since this is a straight skirt, the facing is just straight as well. And I'm just going to machine sew it along the bottom. This is right sides together. And then I'll flip it around and I'll hand sew this top edge to the inside of the skirt. But I just cut 2 strips of this orange, and I need the most annoying amount more. It doesn't even need to go to the edge, it just needed to go to there. So I finished the waist edge a couple of days ago and I didn't really like it at the time, but I figured I'd give it a few days, wait and see. What you think in the moment isn't always, you know, indicative of how you're going to feel about it in the long term, and it took quite a long time, so I figured, you know, we'll give it a few days, wait and see. And I'm at a stage now where I need to get back onto it. I've, you know, got sidetracked with the skirt for a bit, but I need to start finishing off the bodice, putting the sleeves in properly. And yeah, so I looked at it again and I still don't like it. So we're doing bias instead now, and I will show you how I'm doing that. So here is that edge that's just whip stitched down, or felled down depending on your preferred terminology, and those stitches only go through the coutil, so you can't see them from the outside. And you know, it's all fine in theory, there's nothing wrong with it, this is perfectly functional. I just don't like the way it looks. I would prefer to have it covered. So for the neckline, I'm going to add bias over it. So I'm using this same orange fabric that I used for the skirt facing, and I'll show you how I'm going to put that together. Basically, I'm going to cut a square and then I'm going to cut it along the bias and sew it back together like this. That is a messy piece of tape, sorry. And then I'm going to sew together this edge like that. So it's offset, and then I can just cut around and I'll have one big long bias piece. So this is what it looks like now. You can just barely see this seam. That one's a little more obvious. It was completely not necessary for me to pattern match this, by the way. That was just for fun. And then I can cut along here, and that will just continue in a spiral. Here is what the bodice looks like now. So now that this piece of the strap is pieced and added in, the bit that didn't have any top fabric, I was able to sew up this seam at the back, which connects the strap to the back. And that's just, hang on, that's just finished off the same as I've done my other seams, so just zigzagged. And I've done the armhole, also just a zigzag, and now I've started on the neckline. So I've started similar to the waist. I just folded the top fabric over and stitched it down, and I'll just be covering that with the bias that I made. So I will need to trim this back. This is a little bit long still, but that's the general idea. I will probably just be hand sewing that on both sides because, again, I don't really want any stitches going through to the outside. I will, however, be top stitching the placket in, so by machine. This is a fairly long-winded and weird way of putting a placket in, but here it is anyway, in case you're curious. I folded the raw edges up, and I'm going to fold all this seam allowance under. I'll put the placket underneath where my fingers are here and just machine top stitch along the edge, and then the placket itself has a longer seam allowance which I'll be able to tuck under this edge and hand sew down, and that will hide all the raw edges. So yeah, it's starting to come together. The only thing missing after that will be the sleeves, which just need to be sewn in because they're finished off already, and then I can attach the skirt. So we're getting there. So once the neckline is finished off, I went ahead and sewed in the sleeves. I did just do that by machine, just because it was quicker. And once that's sewn, the bodice looks like this. So the sleeve is just sewn, the outer layer of the sleeve by machine, and the lining is just loose on the inside like this. And all I'm gonna do with this is turn the edge of that under and just sew it down by hand to the inside of the bodice, and then the bodice is ready to go. No, it's not. I need to add the hook still, but that's the last thing that needs doing on the bodice, and then I can put the skirt on. Okay, I'm not actually sure when the last time was that I, told you what was happening. Anyway, it's December now. How? Why? How? I don't know. I've spent 61 hours on this dress so far because apparently I can't just make a casual project. It has to be a project and I have to do everything to the highest extent of my abilities, and I can't just chill ever, apparently. So here we are. Anyway, I think I might be able to finish it today, though it's raining and it's been raining and it doesn't look like it's going to stop raining. So yeah, no photos outside today. We'll see how that goes. But yes, so the bodice is finished, finished. All the hooks and eyes in, all the edges finished off, everything. And the skirt is basically finished. All the seams are finished off. The hem facing is in. I have not done the buttonholes on the front, but it is pleated. There was a clip from yesterday of me pleating it. All I did was take it off the mannequin, still on the, I had a piece of grosgrain ribbon around the waist and I pinned it to that and then took it off and I've just tacked it. And I'm gonna hand sew the skirt to the bodice. That's what I'm going to do now. And then I'll be able to put in the buttonholes. I suppose I could have done them before. I wanted to make sure that the top one was a good level from the base of the bodice and I wasn't sure where that was going to be. So yeah, see, there was logic. I had just forgotten what it was, but that was it. Yeah, so I'm thinking, hopefully I haven't jinxed it by saying it now, but it seems promising. So I'll show you where we're at. Okay, here is the bodice and the skirt. So the bodice is totally finished now. I did not film, I don't think I did anyway, putting in these hooks, but those are in now. They turned out neat and I'm happy with them. One quick point, I did make sure to go through to the outer layer, which is not my favorite look, but once it's worn you can really barely see it and it keeps the layers from pulling apart. So the skirt is also ready to go. There's that ribbon that I mentioned and it's just tacked to this. So all that tacking will come out, and I've also marked where the waist will sit, since the waistline of my bodice isn't straight. It dips down a little bit at the center back and a fair bit at the center front. So I've just marked where they'll overlap. I might add a few more marks just so it's easier to see, and then I will just lay them on top of each other and sew them together. You could probably just do this by machine as well, just a top stitch, but yeah, I'm not gonna do that. Sorry, this project is way back and forth on which things are suitable to machine top stitch and which ones aren't. I do have machine top stitching on other parts of the project. It's all just personal preference, right? You can do whatever you want. Okay, I thought I'd just do a quick wrap up just to include a couple of things that didn't quite make the cut earlier, but that I thought you guys might still be interested in. So the first thing is I wanted to include a little video clip of how the lacing hook and eye closure combo thing on the bodice looks when it's actually worn. So that's there. It does work well. I'm really happy with it. A couple of people had mentioned when I said that this is how I was going to do it that they were worried that it was going to be bulky. Valid. But no, it turned out fine. It's comfortable, it's easy to put on. Yeah, I like it. So I would definitely do this again if I had a project that suited it. The second thing I wanted to bring up was the Polonaise aspect of the skirt, so the ties and loops that are used to bustle up the skirt in the back. I did include footage of me actually doing this, but yeah, I figured I'd stick a slightly more detailed explanation in the end here for anyone who wanted it. So there are two ties. They're both 50 centimeters long, but they're folded in half, so 25. And they're sewn to the inside waistline on the side back seam, so that's that curved seam on the back. And there are 2 loops for each tie, so that's 4 total. The first one is close to the side seam, about halfway up the skirt. The second one is closer to the front and about a third of the way up the skirt. I didn't have a scientific way of figuring out how to do this, but what I did is just used some safety pins. So I put the ties in and then I put safety pins where I thought I might want to put the loops, and then I could just tie it up through that and test it and move them around until I was happy. And yeah, that worked great. You could do it on a mannequin, you could do it on yourself, all good. And tying it up is also super simple, so little clip of that. And literally all you do is you just take those ties. I did use like a thin cotton tape. I'm not sure if I mentioned that, but you just feed that through the loops and you tie it in a bow. That's it. That is also how the transformation footage worked, is I just reached behind and untied the bows. I think that's all I've got, so thank you all for watching and I'll see you next time. Bye!